This morning, some Democrats are actually calling on U.S. President Joe Biden to step aside after his poor performance in last night's presidential debate against Donald Trump. Now, Biden struggled to answer questions and his voice was noticeably weak and raspy, confirming many voters' fears about the 81-year-old's fitness for the job. Our Washington Bureau Chief Jackson Proskow joins us now with more on the follow. Jackson, we appreciate this. So obviously, it goes without saying, this is not the headline that Democratic supporters nor his campaign want post-debate. But how much concern is there about Biden after last night?
Well, good morning, Anthony. I have to tell you, it feels like there's a five-alarm fire within the Democratic Party here this morning. I think people were stunned when they saw Joe Biden walk out on that stage last night and within sort of the first 10 minutes of the debate realized what that performance was going to look like. This morning in the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, who's a close friend of President Biden, writes, Joe Biden, a good man and a good president, has no business running for re-election, saying that he is heartbroken by the performance last night. And really, that's what we're hearing a lot of. Of course, the narrative for a very long time now has been that Biden is too old, is not capable of seeking out another term. Based on his performance last night, you've got some critics questioning whether he's capable of finishing out his current term. And yes, that has set off panic within the Democratic Party. You've got operatives playing the blame game for Biden's performance last night. He spent 6 days at Camp David preparing for that. And that's what we saw last night. During the debate, the White House on background, or the campaign on background, started saying that Biden was perhaps suffering from a cold. And so now you've got all these people wondering, is it too late to replace Joe Biden at the top of the ticket? Does the party need to find a new candidate? November is, yes, a long way away, but that convention where that will be decided is creeping up very, very quickly. And I think the bottom line is, yes, we've started historically early with both a debate and a full-fledged presidential campaign, but the panic is very real in the party right now.
So that is the incumbent. And normally, traditionally, we've seen so much conversation about Donald Trump's performance. What stood out for him last night?
A couple things. First of all, yes, he was measured. There was no crowd in the room to play to. His mic was cut off when he wasn't speaking. And so really, he was relatively measured by Donald Trump standards. That said, it was sort of a replay of the greatest hits, which is still going to unnerve a lot of voters just as much as Biden's performance did. For example, Trump continues his election denialism, denying or, leveling claims about the last election being stolen. He was waffly when asked flat out if he would accept the results of this election, and he continued to espouse conspiracy theories and flat out lies. And, really the kind of thing that a lot of Donald Trump's detractors have pointed to since he first launched his very first presidential campaign almost 10 years ago now, that he struggles to tell the truth, that he really does not come across as presidential. And so, I think a lot of people, who do not support Donald Trump were certainly not swayed by his performance last night, despite concerns that they might have about Joe Biden's performance.
All right, the electorate already divided at the best of times in many cases. Not a lot of support, the polling has shown, for either of these candidates even going into last night's debate. So where does this leave voters in what is expected to be a very close election again?
Yeah, the polls continue to show this real horse race between Trump and Biden. It's within the margin of error. Kind of jostles back and forth between the two of them. We're talking about, less than 10% of the American electorate who are actually undecided and might switch their vote around. And so I think that's who last night was targeted at. I'm not sure that last night, though, is going to change a lot of minds. Again, we are a long ways away from November. A lot can happen between now and then, potentially to change voters' minds. You've also got to remember the fact here that, yes, voters may have concerns about both candidates. The bigger risk is that they are just generally dismayed by their choices and decide to sit at home. And that's where it's going to come down to whose supporters are more motivated at the end of the day. And so I think we'll be looking at a lot of rapid response polling. I think you'll see a tendency to dismiss that polling as being too early to be predictive of the final election outcome. And really, I think it's going to come to how this shakes down, especially within the Democratic Party, about whether or not they keep Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. Can Joe Biden escape the calls now to drop out from the race? And does something happen here in the next few weeks to sort of let Joe Biden reset, look presidential, look like he's in command and in control? Or do the calls for him to resign just snowball here and this becomes an unescapable avalanche heading into the convention? And then we're really in uncharted territory here, a party potentially looking to dump its incumbent nominee. Safe to say, Anthony, last night's debate completely upset the election at a historically early inflection point. There's recovery time out there, but the path forward is very uncertain.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time, obviously. The convention in the summer, so not too far in the future. But that being said, there's not a lot of time before the election. Is there anyone that is even a possible candidate? I mean, obviously, the vice president would top the list for a lot of people, but are there other people who are at least being considered? It's hard to even imagine this in this unprecedented situation, though.
Yeah, I mean, informally, behind the scenes, you'll hear names like California Governor Gavin Newsom, Governor Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. You'll hear other state governors like Wes Moore, state senators like Raphael Warnock. But really, it is completely unclear where the Democratic Party goes from here if they are unable to salvage Joe Biden's candidacy. And I think one of the arguments you'll hear from Democrats in favor of switching candidates is an argument that Biden himself has made time and time again. He has said, look, democracy and the future of American democracy are on the ballot this November. And you know, Democrats are asking themselves, if the case is that serious for protecting American democracy, is Joe Biden really the right guy to lead that fight given his performance last night?
All right, a lot of discussion about this. We appreciate all of your time. Jackson, thank you so much. That is our Washington Bureau Chief, Jackson Proskow, joining us from the U.S. Capitol. Thank you.